Wanted to talk a little NFL, and it was mainly because I saw an article that was written that I thought was very, very interesting. I immediately sent it to Kelly, and I said, hey, by the way, hold on to this for 2 weeks because I'm coming on the show in 2 weeks, and I want to talk about this with you on air because, look, it's something that will get brought up when we get to like week 16, 17, 18. When we get to that, this stuff will start coming out. But for us to maybe look at it ahead of time and to at least have it out there, is there anything that may or may not tip us one way whenever we're looking at some of these season-long prop type situations? But Kelly, a really good article that was written, I think it was on the 33rd team that it was written, about all the various incentives and things like that are going on in the NFL with some of the big players that signed some of these deals. And, we can start off with Daniel Jones, and there's just, an incredible amount of incentives for Daniel Jones. And if you're watching at home, which by the way you should be, VSiN.com, VSiN Plus subscription, $9.99 free trial, limited time offer though. You want to hurry and get on that because things can go up. It could be $19.99 by the time you go at it. But Daniel Jones, I mean, listen, this is just a huge list of incentives for Daniel Jones. And listen, don't think that these guys don't know this, and don't think that these guys don't understand when they start getting close to these things, like 19 or more touchdown passes or rank in the top 15 of the NFL in touchdown passes, he gets $250,000. 25 touchdown passes, he gets another $375,000. If he gets 31 touchdown passes, another $375,000. If he can throw for 3,325 yards, he gets $250,000. If he can throw for 3,800 yards, he gets another $375,000. It goes on and on and on with Daniel Jones. And these are all things that are performance-based incentives that some of which are, in fact, attainable. I mean, some of the, listen, 4,700 or more yards, he gets another 37, listen, like 4,700 yards is a lot of yards. Like Daniel Jones ain't throwing over 4,700 yards, but could he possibly throw for 3,700? Could he possibly get to 27 touchdowns? All these different things where he's going to be making, Kelly, I mean, in theory, I kind of tallied it up for Jones and the stuff that I thought that was at least realistic for him. And he could make another couple $1 million this year if he's able to hit about half of these incentives that I think are within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and it's the look, quarterbacks obviously have the most control over this stuff, but it is, you led into it well. I think it's something, this is a good exercise to at least look at the beginning of the season, because this is always a reality in the final week, 2 weeks of the season. And it's always brought up how there's a receiver out there that needs 3 more catches. And, shocker, in the fourth quarter, the ball's going to him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, these quarterbacks want to take care of their dudes, and they're going to do that, which is why, I mean, we can take a look because we have Odell's stuff, right? And so, let's look at Odell's stuff here. And, he just signed the 1-year deal with the Ravens, but it was pretty it was pretty incentive laden as well. And you take a look with Odell, I mean, 30 receptions, you would think this guy can't catch 30 passes, but that's worth $250,000. 40's worth $500,000. 50's worth $750,000. If he can get 60 catches on the year or lead the team in receptions, it's another $1 million for him. And then it continues to kind of trickle up with Odell just as far as the yardage that he's able to get over the course of the season, starting just at 250 receiving yards. He gets another $250,000 and all of this. Yeah. So whenever you look at these, deals, I mean, listen, Odell, $1 million is $1 million. I don't care how rich you are. $1 million is $1 million. And if you think that guy doesn't have, if he's sitting at 58 catches with a game or two left, that he ain't going to be screaming at Lamar to throw the ball to him, and he ain't going to be looking at all those. Like, these are things that are going to be coming up. By the way, if he gets to 1,000 yards, he gets another cool $1 million, does Odell Beckham. 9 touchdowns also gets him another $1 million. So you can see, again, Odell has a chance to make several $1 million in contract incentives as well. And these are all things. 750 receiving yards is $750K. So just, we can kind of keep in mind, and this might be something that Kelly and I can just, be sure to keep in touch, and we can kind of monitor some of these as we move along. But, what does this do from a season-long perspective? Like, what are these guys going to be doing? I mean, you see Odell, the number is just at 575. It's not very high on Odell. He was brought in and certainly was paid, Kelly, to be their number one, right? I mean, this is not like a guy that was brought in to be a number 2. And so we're talking fewer than 600 yards needed for him to get his over on his yearly prop at 575.5. I know there are injury concerns. I know that he didn't get signed at the end of last year because people were worried about those injury concerns. I think the Ravens are a sharp organization. I cannot imagine that the Ravens would give a dude $15 million or up to $15 million with all these incentives and stuff. Like, if they didn't feel pretty confident in where he was going to be come time to take some snaps in week 1. So, again, I know we don't like to play overs, but it would be an over or pass for me on Odell because, again, like getting to 600 receiving yards is really not all that much for if you are a true number one in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, and you're talking about, I think you got to look through this. There was a lot made of that, right, of Odell not getting signed by a team at the end of the year, but like that injury timeline was still really short.
It really was.
And what we're talking about now is a way more realistic timeline for him to return to action and be not only way healthier than what we're talking about last November, last December, but be what? I mean, near 100% or as good as he's going to be going forward at this age. And look, when we last saw him on the field, Matt, he was incredibly important for what the Rams were doing down that stretch. So, bundle all that together.
How many guys you think got to 576 in the NFL last year?
How many guys got to 576?
Yeah, because he's 575 and a half. How many guys got to 576?
50.
65 different guys.
Actually, I was surprised I was that close.
Got to 576 receiving yards last year. By the way, that includes Alec Pierce, Khalif Raymond, Paris Campbell, David Njoku got over this. Yes,
okay,
I know.
So real basic math, that's basically 2 receivers a team, right?
Yes.
So
KJ Osborne got to this receiving number. Again, just saying, it's baked in the health. I mean, obviously the health is baked into this number, and this is assuming that he's not going to play, 5-6 games over the course of this year? Because, again, you were talking KJ Osborne got to 576 receiving yards last year.
I mean, he's going to roll into camp, though, as the number 2 wide receiver, if that. And you're talking about a new offense, right? A new offensive coordinator in camp there in Baltimore that all we've been hearing about is this heavier passing attack that the Baltimore Ravens are going to incorporate. That would be overs all day on Odell Beckham.
Listen, I know there is an injury history there, and so I get all of that. But, again, there are very few organizations that I really look at and do say I think they're sharp.
Yeah.
And I think the Ravens fall into that category. I think they are pretty sharp, and I can't imagine they're going to bring in a dude to pay him that much money if they were really and truly concerned about what he was going to be able to contribute from the team. One more I want to look at real quick. JUJU Smith-Schuster was definitely signed to be the number 1 there for New England. Of course, there are rumors out there that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be visiting, and he would certainly take over that number 1 role if that was the case. That's why I wanted that JUJU wanted to include him here, Kelly, because, listen, there are incentives in this contract. 950 more receiving yards gets him $750,000. If he can get to 1,100, he gets him another $750,000. So, again, if he can get to 1,101 yards, that's a $1.5 million bonus for JUJU Smith-Schuster. Problem being here for JUJU Smith-Schuster is if they do sign another receiver, then especially if that receiver happens to be DeAndre Hopkins, his looks are going to get cut by a substantial amount. And so, unlike what we were talking about with Odell, it would only be unders for me from a JUJU standpoint. One, another guy that does have his own health concerns. We can talk about that. Also, no longer has Patrick Mahomes throwing him the football, which is a pretty big thing, I might add. And if the Patriots do end up trying to add depth at that receiver position, listen, there's no loyalty to Mac Jones to JUJU Smith-Schuster, right? I mean, they have no rapport. They have no chemistry. They have no history together. So whoever that guy might be, whoever Mac Jones enjoys throwing the ball to the most is going to get a bunch of looks here. So unlike these other guys, even with those incentives for him, I would be under or pass.
Yeah, completely under or pass. And actually, it might even get close to a bet for me if you were looking at this now, because even if it's not DeAndre Hopkins, and I know there's not a whole lot of other guys out there, but
they got to add something.
Yeah, I'm like, are the Patriots really running into this season with this wide receiving group that I'm looking at right now?
I know.
And I mean, look, this team had its offensive struggles last year, too. Even if we want to just talk about that part of the game, Mac Jones took a step back last year. I think we all expect him to find at least a middle ground between what he did his rookie year and last year in this third season. But, man, I don't think you can forget that when you're looking at some of these props.
Since we don't have enough time to get to a couple of these other things that we'll get to, we'll do that at 8:30, so stick around, 8:30 Pacific, talk about some Bryce Young props, some Justin Herbert props, things like that. I think these are fairly interesting with some of the news coming out of minicamp here as we've got this going on. But, Kelly, I mean, we'll just keep on going with the Patriots. For me, Patriots are one of my bigger fades of the year. I have an under on them already from a win total perspective. And it's a couple of different things, right? I mean, if you look on paper, you just looked at the wide receiver core and can't even believe that that's what they're going in. Yeah. Like, they are the most inferior team in that division by a long shot from a player perspective. Then they have the worst quarterback in the division by a long shot as well at this point. And then if you just look at the end of the day, they have the hardest schedule in all of the NFL, and that actually does matter. So you're talking about a lot of things that are working against this Patriots squad. And Bill Belichick's never going to say, hey, yeah, we're rebuilding and we're, whatever. That's just not in his nature. But I think also Bill Belichick, as the football guy, has to look at that roster and understand, listen, we're not going to be able to compete this year. This is not a team that can get it done. We might be better off trying to climb up the draft board a little bit and try and see if we can't improve this roster a ton. So, again, I'm a big fade here.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.